In this poem, we do not really have any reference to what he was doing in these 5 years. We can assume that since he is talking about being away from nature, we can assume, and this assumption is a bit simplistic, we can assume that he was perhaps in the city. From the way he expresses how he has missed being near nature, how he has missed being in nature's proximity, we can assume that he was spending a life of urban drudgery. Now that he is more mature, he realizes that he has come to this place once again because he is driven by love for nature. He is not escaping anymore. For nature then, the coarser pleasures of my boyish days and their glad animal movements all gone by, to me was all in all. So nature was everything for him. And in parenthesis, he says, the coarser pleasures of my boyish days. Pleasures that are rough, that are rustic, that are not sophisticated, that are not guided by philosophical realizations. And those pleasures were accompanied by movements, animal movements. I cannot paint what then I was. So I cannot totally remember what I was then, because I have been transformed by the power of harmony, that vision of harmony that nature has gifted me. The sounding cataract haunted me like a passion. So after clarifying that he cannot give us the exact picture, he embarks upon an attempt to describe what he was like before. The sounding cataract haunted me like a passion. Notice how passionate he was when he was younger, and it's very natural for young people to be more passionate. The tall rock, the mountain, and the deep and gloomy wood, their colors and their forms, their visual appearances, were then to me an appetite. Again, we have a reference to the idea that nature is providing him with some kind of food, nourishment. So nature has always done so. Nature has always been a source of nourishment for him, even when he was young, more so when he was young. A feeling and a love that had no need of a remoter charm by thought supplied, nor any interest unborrowed from the eye. What does it mean? Let's take these lines one by one. The sounding cataract haunted me like a passion. Whenever or wherever he went, he carried that sound of large waterfalls with him. The tall rock, the mountain, and the deep and gloomy wood, their colors and their forms. Notice carefully that Wordsworth is building up an imagery that is essentially visual. It is visual because it refers to that time when Wordsworth was here for the first time in 1793, when he was young and when he was more passionate, perhaps, filled with youthful energy. So he is recounting. Notice how broken and fragmented these images are. When we try to recall the past, we do so in bits and pieces, in fragments, in disjointed sequences. When we try to recollect the past, we only get pieces, fragments. So it was more immediate. The experience of visiting a landscape was accompanied by a sense of urgency and immediacy, devoid of any thought or any interest that was not borrowed from the eye. That is to say, everything was visual, everything was focused on the present moment, everything had a sense of urgency, had a sense of being totally there physically at the present moment, devoid of any thought or understanding or perception whatsoever. So when I came to this place for the first time, I was young. Wordsworth is saying, I was young, and all the pleasures that this place offered to me were visual in nature, and it stopped there. I didn't realize anything. I didn't have anything to carry forward. It offered me no thought, no understanding. Or rather, I was young and I was immature, perhaps, to realize that there is more to this. There is more to the colors and forms and the pleasures that they give, and there is more to the idea of satiating the appetite. So the appetite before was an appetite for visual pleasures. But now that appetite has transformed into something else. It has become an almost metaphysical desire to be at one with everything, to be united with all forms of life. So appetite, this word needs to be understood, and how there has been a transformation in the conception of appetite. The word appetite refers to the need of the body to be nourished for survival, but that same word has been given a new meaning altogether after these 5 years, where it now comes to suggest a desire for a metaphysical unity between the self and other forms of life, between the self and nature, a feeling and a love that had no need of a remoter charm, by thought supplied, nor any interest unborrowed from the eye. Wordsworth clarifies that that time is past, and all its aching joys are now no more. Aching joys, ecstasy. Those joys, those pleasures are now no more, along with the dizzy raptures that he used to feel or experience when he was younger. Not for this faint eye, nor mourn nor murmur, other gifts have followed. Wordsworth is not sad for this. Wordsworth does not mourn the loss of the ability to feel nature, to experience in nature in such ways, because other gifts have followed. He has been endowed with other blessings, other offerings with the passage of time. For such loss, I would believe, abundant recompense. He has got enough or sufficient compensation for the loss of youthful energy, passion, and vitality, the freshness with which youth perceives things. Wordsworth recognizes nature as the anchor of his purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of his heart, and the soul of all his moral being. So the stanza reaches a climax with this line, soul of all my moral being. And then in the next stanza he continues, nor perchance if I were not thus taught, should I the more suffer my genial spirits to decay. For thou art with me here upon the banks of this fair river, thou my dearest friend, my dear, dear friend, and in thy voice I catch the language of my former heart, and read my former pleasures in the shooting lights of thy wild eyes. And the final stanza is focused intensely upon the present moment, and as he is experiencing the place after 5 years, as he is describing the place, even in this moment his mind recaptures his past experience. And so you have two different perspectives, two different views of the same place. One is through the lens of the past, and one is through the lens of the present moment. And in the act of reviving those memories, he feels a kind of sorrow and he feels a kind of joy at the same time. And he is also assured that these experiences of the present moment, the present beauty, the aesthetic experience of nature, will provide him with nourishment, with mental peace and harmony in years to come. Nature will provide him with solace and peace. And whenever he is lonely, these visions will haunt his mind. They will come back to him again and again and make him happy, give him hope. He also acknowledges that now he is different from the person he was 5 years ago. And nature, although nature remains the same, he has changed. So his change is actually measured against the stability, the unchanging quality of nature. The waterfalls, the woods, the mountains, these physical formations, features shaped his passions, his desires, and also his love. But now, after all these years, he is not mourning for the loss of that kind of animal passion, because his relationship with nature has changed. And now, for the loss of that youthful energy, he is compensated by what we can call more mature gifts. For example, now he can look upon nature not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still sad music of humanity. And he can now feel the presence of something that is very, very powerful, very elemental, very fundamental, He is looking at the setting suns and he is looking at the oceans. Nature is various, it's variegated, it's not one thing. Nature has different forms in different countries, different ways in which it manifests itself, different kinds of trees, different kinds of weather conditions, environments. But all of that, through all of that variety and differences, there is one particular energy, one particular spirit that flows through everything. This is what Wordsworth describes as emotion and a spirit that impels all thinking thoughts and rolls through all things. And this is exactly why he feels that he is still in love with mountains and the green pastures and the forests, because it is these natural formations, it is these places that provide a kind of an anchor to his thoughts, and they also guard and protect and preserve the core of his moral being. This is what Wordsworth have talked about in the stanza that we read in the last class.